Darkcast Network, indie pods with a dark side.
Hey, little skeletons. I'm Gina.
I'm Amber.
And this is Weird True Crime.
We obviously talk about death a lot on this show, and I, for one, always hope I'll go peacefully in my sleep. Mostly for the benefit of my family, because I don't want them to have to witness anything horrendous or tragic or anything like that. Knowing my luck, though, and the fact that Murphy's Law follows me around like my frickin' shadow, I'll end up checking out of the game of life like one of the poor souls we're talking about today. Getting a lot of 1,000 Ways to Die vibes here, but don't worry. We don't have 1,000 to go over, just 10.
Yeah, we've definitely established in the past that no one gets out of this life alive. I personally hope that I die in also a peaceful way. I would like to go on my sleep. I would like to not see it coming. I would like it to not be something traumatic or, like you said, something that's going to haunt my family forever. And that's, I think what most people hope for. So fingers crossed that that's the case for us. And maybe as long as we don't talk too much shit about these people, we'll get some good karma working in our favor.
No, there's no shit talking about anyone. It's just they really lost the lottery on ways to go out
they did.
In this. And, if anything is going to haunt my family, it's going to be me.
It's true.
Not like how I died. I will be the one like rattling chains.
You will traumatize them on your own as a ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get ready for those flickering lights and spooky sounds.
I fully expect you to haunt me as well. Please. Thank you.
Oh, so I'm going to go before you?
I know. That's what I was like. If you go before me. Either way, we have to haunt each other. That's like a pact we have to make.
There we go. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But okay, before we dive in, let's go over our riddle for today. Some try to hide, some try to cheat, but time will show we always will meet. What am I? Stay tuned to the end to find out the answer.
We're going to start our list of strange, unusual, and somewhat ironic or funny lists of death talking about Gary Hoy. 39-year-old Gary Hoy was a lawyer who specialized in corporate and security law and had been employed at Holden Day Wilson since 1979. Holden Day Wilson was a Toronto-based law firm that held offices at the prominent Toronto Dominion Centre, a series of 5 financial district skyscrapers built in 1969. You can imagine the spectacular view from the firm's suites on the 24th floor. Gary had been employed with Holden Day Wilson since 1979, and while he had no children and was separated from his wife, he believed his professional life had only just begun. Unfortunately for Gary, on July 9th of 1993, he attended a reception at the office along with all of his colleagues to welcome articling students interested in an apprenticeship at Holden Day Wilson. Gary took the students on a tour of the 24th floor offices and decided to perform one of his party tricks that he had successfully done on a number of other occasions. Gary threw himself at one of the office windows at full force. Why? It was a combination of showing off, getting a few laughs, and demonstrating the strength of modern Canadian architecture. When he decided to perform the trick a second time, things went horribly wrong. The window he rammed into simply popped out of the building and sent him hurling toward the ground to his doom. Gary's death was not treated as suspicious and was considered death by misadventure, by the police. It was a traumatizing event for all who witnessed it, and unfortunately, the law firm shut down a few years later.
What's sad is that he had done it so many times before without any issues. But that last time he did it, for some reason, instead of just doing it once and being like, oh, hey, he did it a second time. And that second time, the window just said, I've had enough. And it popped completely out of the frame just from being loosened over time with him performing that same little party trick.
I mean, poor Gary, but it's also a weird flex. Like, I don't know that I would consider the strength of the office windows in the building as one of the perks at a new job. If anything, it would just make me want to avoid that coworker and question if I really wanted that internship. And also, how many times had he run into the same window? Was this something he had been doing for years to the same window? Maybe mix it up a little bit, like...
Or just maybe not do it at all.
It's a weird way to entertain people, but I mean, Gary, RIP.
Up next on our strange ways to go is Jose Luis Ochoa. I honestly don't even know where to begin with this one. Okay, cockfighting. I bet you didn't expect me to go there, huh? Well, cockfighting is a sport, and I use that term lightly, that originated in ancient times in India, China, Persia, and other Eastern countries that was later introduced into Greece around 524 to 460 BC. It was practiced by the Greeks before battle in order to stimulate the warriors. The practice spread in Europe during the Middle Ages and was widely known in England during the early colonial period. Nobles and commoners alike enjoyed it, and just like today, a large element of gambling was involved. I won't go into details of what the actual fight entails, but as you can imagine, two people pit their prized roosters together in a usually bloody fight, typically to the death. Believe it or not, it wasn't until 2007-2008 that the last state in the U.S. banned cockfighting. Looking at you, Louisiana. As we all know, just because something is illegal doesn't mean that people aren't going to do it. That's where Mr. Ochoa comes into the story. Before the fateful day in February 2011 that I'm about to get into, he had paid $370 in fines in the year before after a no contest plea to owning or training an animal for fighting. Jose had strapped a knife to his poultry's leg to prepare for the fight, and apparently, at some point, the bird actually stabbed him in the calf with the knife. Jose and the others involved in the fight fled the scene when the police arrived to break it up. Ochoa unfortunately died from his injury about 2 hours after he arrived at the hospital. Sergeant Martin King said, quote, "I have never seen this type of incident. People have been known to bleed out from those injuries if medical attention is not obtained immediately." End quote. So, not entirely sure how he died exactly, but the autopsy did confirm he died due to sharp force injury to his right calf, and his death was ruled an accident. Regardless of specifics, the dude died from being stabbed by a rooster.
My guess is that the knife perforated the femoral artery in his calf. This is one of the major suppliers of blood, and once punctured, it doesn't take long before it becomes fatal. He probably waited too long to get medical attention and had lost too much blood by the time he got to the hospital. While it is sad that he died from these injuries, it also feels a bit like karma, considering he'd been in trouble for this behavior before. And honestly, the rooster is probably just giving him a big fuck you for abusing it for all that time. So,
basically,
karma's a bitch.
And nobody's going to charge the rooster with murder, so,
The rooster was going to get killed anyway in the ring. I mean, what are you going to,
Well, I don't know. He stabbed his owner. He may have been the feisty one to come out on the other end, but regardless, chicken nugget.
Also, chicken nugget. Also, cockfighting is illegal. So even in the illegal realm of things, can you put a knife on your rooster's leg?
So they often, so if you know like what a rooster's foot looks like, they actually have like this kind of spur on the back of their foot. They'll put knives or blades or razor blades or something like that. They'll strap it to there to make it a little bit, because you know the spur on the back of the rooster's foot is only going to do so much. So to make it more of sensational scene, you know, more interesting or whatever, they're going to enhance the blood letting capabilities of the poultry in question. So
God, what a gross sport.
See, this is one of the only ones in the story that I kind of laughed at. Like, dude, you were doing something dumb. Like, it's you fuck around and find out. Like,
100% fuck around and find out. And that rooster was tired of being fucked with. And, you know, he found out. That's
exactly.
Really all there is to it. Sorry, dude.
Yep.
Okay. When you go to the beach, you're typically worried about sunscreen or possibly a shark sighting, but other relatively handleable situations that don't strike a ton of fear into the average beachgoer, other than drowning. But what if I told you that our unfortunate soul in this story didn't die from anything having to do with the water, though? In August of last year, a woman in Garden City, South Carolina, was enjoying some fun in the sun on the beach as she sat minding her own business. All of a sudden, a gust of wind picked up a beach umbrella, sending it through the air. Tammy Peralt, 63, was with her husband and some friends when they said duck. But unfortunately, Tammy was in the line of fire and was struck in the chest by the flying umbrella. Some off-duty medical professionals and Good Samaritans did what they could to provide help to Tammy before she was taken to the local emergency room. Unfortunately, only an hour after she had been impaled in the chest by the umbrella, Tammy was pronounced dead. Tammy's husband, Mike, said, quote, "She was one of a kind. Tammy loved everybody. She never had a bad word for anybody at all." End quote. She is truly missed by her friends and family. Mike filed a petition against Beach Services Limited, which is a full-service beach chair and umbrella rental service, for the wrongful death of his wife. While it won't bring her back, it was settled for an undisclosed amount due to the media attention the incident received. Death by beach umbrella is incredibly rare, with only 2 being reported between 2013 and 2018, but injuries are a lot more common. During the period of 2010 to 2018, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission estimates there were 2,800 beach umbrella-related injuries treated in emergency rooms across the nation. Then, a study done in the Journal of Safety Research that analyzed data from CPSC's National Electronic Injury Surveillance System estimated that there were 5,512 injuries from beach umbrellas between 2000 and 2019.
Yeah, I think the next time I go to the beach, I'm going to leave the umbrella home and opt for the canopy, even if it is a massive pain in the butt. But, you know, we've got one that has like you actually just fill the bags with the weights with sand to keep it down. I'm good with that.
Stick to that. This one definitely hit a little too close to home because we used an umbrella in Cancun in addition to the canopy. Because of the way the sun was, the canopy didn't do shit. So we had to get an umbrella to put in front of it. And those things are so heavy and they're not easy to move around. And you have to use this specific tool to dig out enough sand to securely put them in the ground. So it doesn't surprise me at all that there are so many injuries every year due to beach umbrellas at all. Because if you don't get those things deep enough and secure enough, one gust of wind, they're going. So this is terrifying to me. Poor Tammy.
Well, for this next one, we're in Florida again. No, it's not really one of those stories, though, so. This one did make me dive down the statistics rabbit hole. Did you know there was an estimated 7,500 pedestrians killed by drivers last year, which is the highest number since 1981?
Yikes.
My home state of New Mexico was at the top of the list as the most dangerous state for pedestrians. Arizona and Florida were up there, though. Another thing I stumbled across was, according to the CDC, there are a staggering 4.7 million dog bites in the US per year. Around 1,000 of them require emergency care, and roughly 16 of them result in a fatality. That is a whole other ball of worms that we are not going to get into on this show. And that's not what happened to this particular Florida man who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, our poor, unfortunate soul in question was a pedestrian, so to speak, but he wasn't bitten by his dog. In January 2013, a 60-year-old man was struck and killed by his best friend in his own van. James Campbell and his partner, Iris Fortner, had returned to their home in Florida when Iris backed the 1995 Chevy van into their property. James got out of the van from the passenger side to open the metal gate outside of their home. When Iris opened the driver's door to get a visual as to where James had been standing, their large boxer came running toward the van and jumped in, where he hit the accelerator. Despite Iris's efforts to stop it from happening, the van struck and ran over James, trapping him underneath. And he was unfortunately pronounced dead at the scene. Yeah. The poor man was hit and killed by his own van, by his own dog. Boxers are known for their loyalty, affection, intelligence, and upbeat and playful personalities. I've known a few in my lifetime that are just giant goofballs. And it sounds like James's boxer was just a big ball of excitement at the sight of the open door and landed wrong.
This one is truly heartbreaking. I'm trying to figure out the logistics, though while I think talking through it again made me picture it in my head and have a better understanding of what happened.
Because, if you've ever backed in like a big vehicle, it helps to open the door and kind of look behind you, like get an actual visual. So she had it open and, her foot probably lightly on the brake to make sure she wasn't going to hit James. And big doofy doofball came flying in out of nowhere. And yeah, I mean, he was probably, huge and gave her a good fight. Because if he hit her and knocked her out of the way so she wasn't hitting the brake anymore, and then he landed on the accelerator, bam. Yeah,
which I could see it, because they're big dogs, so it would be really easy to just get pummeled by it and not be able to move away from it.
She actually suffered some minor injuries and she was treated and she was fine. And then, they went through a whole big investigation about what had happened to and ruled it.
Was the dog okay, though?
Any article that I read didn't say anything about the dog. For the sake of my happiness, sanity, and well-being, I'm going to say he was fine, just maybe a little traumatized.
That's a sad story. We can't seem to go one What the Fuck Wednesday episode without talking about something involving poop, feces, butt butter, really, really Amber, butt butter, gross, whatever you want to call it. And in the realm of strange ways to die, this is a really shitty way to go. Yes, pun intended. Back in March of 1980, the elderly mayor of Betterton, Maryland, was performing one of her voluntary mayoral duties Monica Myers was a widow and a former nurse in her Chesapeake Bay community of 125 residents. That is a small town. She had been a member of the Betterton Council for about 6 months before she was appointed as mayor when the previous mayor, Charles Clark, was tragically killed in a car accident. Carl Gustafson, the town engineer, arrived at the Betterton treatment facility early in the morning. According to him, Miss Myers often brushed the tanks and took tests for chlorine and sediment. When he climbed up to the catwalks over the tanks where Miss Myers would usually stand to clean the edges and do her testing, he found her equipment there. Upon closer inspection, he discovered her body floating face down in the 15-foot deep aeration tank below him. She had unfortunately already passed, and no life-saving measures were taken. Chief Deputy Buster Blackiston said, quote, "It looks to me like she was up on the catwalks over the top of the tank and slipped and fell into human waste. It's just like putty, and she didn't have a chance to get out. It's like quicksand." End quote. The consistency of the vat of human waste the poor woman fell into was compared to that of quicksand. Fun fact about quicksand: it's just ordinary sand that is so saturated with water that the friction between the sand particles is reduced, thus making it unable to support any weight. Therefore, you slowly sink, and it can be tough to get out.
I'm going to have to ask my mom about that. Granted, she didn't fall all the way in, but she had a run-in with the septic tank at our house.
Gross.
I remember sitting on the trampoline and seeing my mom, like, we lived on an acre, like, property, and we were at one end, and she was all the way at the other end of the property, and I just see her kind of walking up, limping. She's wearing a white shirt and, like, little biker shorts, and one of her legs was just brown from, like, mid-thigh down.
Oh my God.
And she was pissed. It's like, "Mom, are you okay?" She didn't even acknowledge me.
No.
She went inside and immediately got showered and cleaned up. So
I would have sat in the shower for the rest of the day. And what happened to your mom is exactly why I refuse to live in a house with a septic tank. 100%. No, thank you. Absolutely not. And this poor woman, 80 years old, full life, and she goes out face down in a vat full of poop. That is not okay.
I am going to hope that she was older. You know, maybe she had a medical emergency or something happened and she was dead before she went in.
I hope so.
So that's what I mean, it's tragic, it's sad, but that's how I'm, like, hoping to get,
make it a little better.
Yeah.
That's true.
She didn't literally drown in butt butter, so.
I'm never going to look at the word butter the same way. Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gross. Okay.
As most of you probably already know, we live in Texas, and it's hot as hell here, like too hot to leave the house to do anything, bake cookies on your dashboard hot, and I'm over it. I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah, it's gross.
I've had a lot of time to read and learn new things staying indoors away from the heat of Hades outside. Did you know that droughts are considered a natural disaster? No, I didn't. Tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, wildfires, and earthquakes are all natural disasters that we're, all too familiar with. But a less common natural disaster is a sinkhole. You want to talk about terrifying? Sinkholes are holes in the ground that form when water dissolves surface rock, most commonly limestone, which is easily eroded by water. They can also be formed when the roofs of caves collapse, and they're typically like funnel shaped with the wide end open at the surface and the narrow end at the bottom of the pool. Sinkholes vary in depth from a shallow hole of about 3 feet or 1 meter to more than 160 feet deep or 50 meters. Florida, Texas, Alabama, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania are the places where most damage from sinkholes tends to occur. Our next unsuspecting victim resided in Florida and learned firsthand the terror of sinkholes. Back in 2013 in Seffner, Florida, Jeremy Bush had just gone to bed and heard a noise like a car hitting the house, followed by his brother, Jeffrey, yelling for help. Jeremy ran to his brother's room and flipped on the lights just to see his brother's room disappearing into a sinkhole beneath their house. The tip of Jeffrey's mattress was the only thing left and slowly sinking into the hole. Jeremy dove into the hole to try to dig for his brother, but unfortunately, despite his best efforts, Jeffrey's body was never found. The specific type of sinkhole that claimed Jeffrey's life was the rarest kind, and due to its suddenness, often the most catastrophic. Jeremy's home, as well as 2 neighboring homes, were demolished, and efforts were made to reduce the likelihood of the sinkhole opening again. But unfortunately, this particular sinkhole has opened 2 more times since then, and just reopening the wounds for Jeremy and the loss of his brother. I can't even imagine. I mean, I will never complain about my child waking me up in the middle of the night now, as long as I don't ever get woken up by a damn sinkhole.
Yeah, this is terrifying considering we are in Texas and you can't dig more than what feels like 6 inches without hitting limestone. That shit is everywhere. We're also right next to an extremely large natural cavern. We live very close to a quarry, and so they're constantly like little explosions, mining rocks and limestone and everything like that. And it shakes the whole house. So this story was like, watch one day, it shakes and it just opens up the earth, and that's it. So that's fun. That's fun. I hope that he moved far, far away from where that sinkhole kept recurring and doesn't have to deal with the trauma of that anymore, because that's awful.
Yeah, I can't
There's no
even
words.
imagine
It's
that
just
one. No, it's terrible.
It seems like something out of a natural disaster movie. Doesn't seem real.
I know. That's kind of what, if I hadn't seen all of the newspaper articles and the interviews and stuff, I would have been like, there's no way. No, they unfortunately lived through that horror.
Mm-hmm. You see them the news articles about sinkholes and cars falling into them and stuff, and the pictures you see. But I couldn't imagine one deep enough that could just sink an entire bedroom with a person in it.
And I found one picture of in his bedroom. It's just a black hole. It's wow. It is terrifying. And
that's awful.
Poor guy, just that's how you're woken up by being sucked into the earth in the comfort and safety of your own damn bed.
That's not how you want to wake up in the middle of the night.
That's not okay. No,
it's not. Our next strange death is more ironic than strange, really. In 2001, Dean Kamen and Doug Field designed and built the original Segway unit, and it debuted on Good Morning America in 2001. These nifty little devices allowed riders to cruise up to speeds of 12.5 miles per hour. Arrested Development and the movie Paul Blart Mall Cop featured Segways in humorous ways, so people associated them with the nerd stereotypes there for quite a while. Side note, Arrested Development is awesome. In 2009, Jimmy Heselden bought Segway in an effort to turn the company around and popularize the scooters. Unfortunately, the company still struggled, and a year later, Jimmy met his untimely demise. Following Heselton's death, the company was sold to Roger Brown in early 2013. Brown made changes to the staff and redesigned the Segway so it could be sold for a much lower price point. After turning a small profit in 2015, Brown sold the company to Ninebot for $75 million. That's a lot of money. The new owners made a killing with the redesigned scooters, and companies like Bird and Lime launched in 2017 with fleets of the scooters. Sadly, the company announced in 2020 that the Segway would be discontinued and they would concentrate on other projects. So the Segway had a roller coaster of a ride that wasn't appreciated during its time. Jimmy Heselton tried to turn it around, but ultimately his death contributed to some of the Segway's issues. Why, you ask? Well, back in September of 2010, Jimmy went out for a cruise on his Segway on the footpath above the river wharf in the English village of Boston Spa. A dog walker was approaching from the opposite side, and it's believed that Heselton reversed his scooter to make room for the dog walker to pass. Unfortunately, Heselton stumbled and disappeared out of view. Sean Christie, the dog walker, spotted Jimmy 42 feet below, face down in the river, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. The very machine he was trying to make popular was the vessel in which he rode to his death in the end.
I can honestly say that I've never even ridden a Segway. I'm not coordinated enough for that, and I most certainly would have ended up like poor Jimmy did.
Oh, same. Every time I'm in downtown Austin and I see a row of those Lime scooters that you can rent to go around town on, I literally see my life flash before my eyes and keep walking. Not today. I will not die on a scooter today. No, thank you. That's really sad. He was like, this is my baby. This is my, passion, is making it big with these sweet ass Segways. And then he freaking trips and dies on one.
That's why I don't like to leave my house. I trip over cordless phones.
Same. Well, I break my toes on doors, so.
Anyway, moving right along. None of the deaths we've talked about so far are funny, really. I mean, maybe the rooster, but they are sad and very strange. This next one isn't funny either, but more unbelievable. I was today years old when I learned that people going over Niagara Falls in a barrel was a feat that some legitimately tried to accomplish. Annie Edson Taylor was a school teacher who decided that on her 63rd birthday, she was going to be the first person to survive a trip over Niagara Falls in a barrel.
Okay.
She used a custom-made barrel out of oak and iron with padding from a mattress. On October 24th, 1901, her barrel was put over the side of a rowboat and she climbed in, along with her lucky heart-shaped pillow. The currents carried the barrel over the Canadian Horseshoe Falls, and rescuers reached her shortly after, where she was discovered alive and relatively uninjured, except for a small gash on her head. She told the press later, quote, "If it was with my dying breath, I would caution anyone against attempting the feat. I would sooner walk up to the mouth of a cannon knowing it was going to blow me to pieces than make another trip over the fall." End quote. Well, then along came Bobby Leach from Cornwall, England. This daredevil first stepped into the spotlight in Niagara Falls in 1906 when he parachuted into the Niagara River after jumping off the upper steel arch bridge. That wasn't enough, though. His ultimate goal was to become the second person and first man to go over the Horseshoe Falls in a barrel. Finally, after lots of trials and tribulations, on July 25th, 1911, he was ready to go. He was strapped in a tight harness in a cylindrical steel barrel with wooden bumpers at each end. Surprisingly, he also survived with only a gash to his forehead and some bumps and bruises. In the years that followed, Leach and his wife traveled the world with his barrel. 15 years after his successful plunge over the falls, Bobby met his demise. While walking down a street in New Zealand, he slipped on an orange peel, fell down, and broke his leg. Sadly, infection set in and his leg had to be amputated, but due to complications, he passed away during surgery. This man managed to survive literally going over Niagara Falls in a barrel, but an orange peel ultimately led to his death.
This would make a great documentary. Yeah. Honestly, so many people would relate to what happened to Bobby. You accomplish all of these amazing feats in life, only to be taken down by something small and insignificant, like an orange peel.
I'm sorry, but is going over Niagara Falls in a barrel like really this grand achievement to be like super duper proud of?
It's just like all the daredevils, like the base jumpers, and all, it's all in the same realm. You know?
I am not one of those people.
I'm not either.
Put me in a protective bubble, please, and thank you.
Keep my feet on the ground at all times. No falling off of things on purpose.
I say this, but I legitimately 100% would go bungee jumping or skydiving.
Nope. No, because I would be the 0.00001% where the parachute didn't open or the bungee cord broke.
Something like, knowing my luck, I would be too, but I would still. Funny side note, we're talking about daredevils and everything. Annie Taylor, the woman who originally went over the falls, she wasn't exactly a daredevil. She did it for money.
Really?
She kind of was down on her luck and she thought, I will do this, the publicity, whatever, I'll get some money out of it. And I mean, she didn't.
That was how she came up with getting money?
So that's why I go like, why would this be a thing that people would want to do? Because her sole motivation was to get money for doing it. And she didn't. Also, second side note, in preparation for Annie to go over the falls, they did do a trial run with her barrel with a cat in it. The cat survived. Thankfully, the kitty did live. But yeah, she pushed that. I think
I'm more upset by the cat.
That's why I didn't originally leave it in to talk about, because I knew that you would have been like all up in arms about it, but
I mean, not up in arms. Cats are not my favorite.
I'm kidding. Oh, I know.
I'm not a fan of any animal testing in any way, shape, or form. So,
no.
Don't try out your shenanigans on a cat.
Yeah, but when you said it would make a great documentary, I'm like, oh man, they'd have to talk about that poor cat.
They would. PETA would be pissed. Don't come at me, PETA. You would be pissed. Okay. Yeah. But that sucks. It sucks he died, Life of a thrill seeker dies from orange peel, I
mean, the orange peel didn't directly cause his death, but it was the starting.
Yeah. It was the tip of Oh, man. Next on our list, surprisingly involves another beach accident. Pharmaceutical salesman Robert Gary Jones was on a business trip to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, for GlaxoSmithKline. He was big on nutrition and exercise, so he took the opportunity to go for a jog along the beach. At the same time, Edward Smith of Chesapeake, Virginia, along with a single passenger, was flying a Lance Air 4P aircraft, which is basically a small airplane that can be built from a kit. The Lance Air 4P is about 25 feet in length with a 35 feet wingspan and a gross weight of about 3,550 pounds. It can reach max speeds upwards of 342 miles per hour. It holds one crew member and up to 3 passengers. The term kit plane means it is a home-built aircraft, also known as an amateur-built aircraft constructed from scratch, from plans, or from pre-made kits. Talk about taking your paper airplane to the next level. But fun fact, I actually do know all about these kits, thanks to a plane-obsessed 7-year-old who knows everything possible about planes. I have seen one of these planes in person. They are tiny. They look like death traps. No, thank you. No, thank you. They're tiny. You stand next to one and you feel like a giant. I couldn't imagine flying in one. No. Anyway, the plane, piloted by Edward, took off from Orlando at around 4:45 p.m. and was en route to Virginia when it started leaking oil at about 13,000 feet. They lost the propeller and oil was smeared all over the windshield, reducing visibility to next to nothing. So Edward had to make an emergency landing. Edward guided the coasting plane along the shoreline to land instead of trying to land in the water, as the plane likely wasn't carrying flotation equipment and he would have been dealing with a whole new set of problems. Unfortunately, due to the limited visibility, Edward wasn't able to see Robert jogging along the shoreline and hit the unsuspecting jogger from behind. It's likely that Robert didn't hear anything since the aircraft was basically silently gliding through the air due to the issues it was having. Being hit by a small airplane jogging along the beach was probably the last thing that Robert had anticipated would happen. Needless to say, Edward and Robert's families were completely shocked by the tragedy.
I can't even imagine. I'm going to be really hyper aware of my future beach vacations for sure from now on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, although between umbrellas and aircrafts and the usual nuisances expected, maybe I'll just stick to going to your house and swimming from now on.
I feel like that's probably our safest bet. Yeah.
But man, poor Robert. And he was, he was also jogging with headphones in or earbuds in.
Oh.
So he really didn't hear. There wasn't, it was already quiet anyway, so there really wasn't much that he was going to be able to hear. And someone had even said that Edward should have been able to see, like there's a small window on the side, and he should have been able to see, but he for whatever reason, he just, with all of the oil everywhere and him focusing on just trying to land, because it's not just his life that he's, he had a passenger with him as well. So he's got to think about the life of the passenger. And he's hoping that there's nobody in the way. But it kind of sounds like the area that he chose to land wasn't like this huge, like tourist attraction place that was going to be severely crowded and like a whole bunch of people there. So I mean, if it was, then
it's just bad luck.
Yeah, I just think it was wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, and in that moment, you're probably so panicked. It's hard to think clearly anyway, So it's just an unfortunate accident.
It's sad. Sad for
it is sad.
Robert's family. He was actually on his way home to go celebrate his his daughter's birthday. I think she was either 2 or 3.
Oh, no.
And then, of course, Edward has to deal with that knowledge of what happened for the rest of his life. So just
both devastating.
You don't expect to be hit by a damn plane on the beach. Just
maybe
at the
some
airport.
Big waves.
Yeah. I mean,
Not a
now
small plane.
umbrellas possibly going to be watching out for those, but not a small airplane. No. Last but not least is one that I couldn't help but include. Even if you're not a drinker, maybe you were in the past, or you've at least heard of the whiskey Jack Daniels. Jasper Newton Jack Daniel was born in or around 1849-1850. The exact date is unknown, but he was the youngest of 10 children. His mother died when he was very young, and his father died in the Civil War shortly after. He was then taken in by a local preacher and moonshine maker named Dan Call when he was in his teens. Living with Call, he learned to make whiskey using the sour mash method, which most distillers abandoned over time, but it became a staple of Daniel's whiskey. Using the money from his inheritance after his father's death, he founded a legally registered distilling business in 1875. In 1884, he purchased the hollow and land where Jack Daniel's distillery is still located today, also known as Stillhouse Hollow or Jack Daniel's Hollow. In the late 1890s, he chose his signature square-shaped bottles, and his brand grew even further when he won the gold medal for finest whiskey at the St. Louis World Fair in 1904, where he won against 20 long-standing distillers from around the world. As he got older and his health declined, he chose to retire, and his 2 nephews operated the distillery. Of course, nationwide prohibition started in 1920, and we all know how that turned out. Mr. Daniel, however, wasn't around long enough to see the end of prohibition. Legend has it that Daniel had injured his toe when he kicked his safe in anger because he couldn't remember the combination. Ouch, and also relatable. It is said that he developed a blood infection stemming from that injury, which led to blood poisoning and eventually his death in 1911. Biographers dispute that this is actually true, but for now, I'm going to believe that someone else had terrible luck, as I do, and that the great founder of Jack Daniels was bested by an iron safe. In a way.
Hi. Well, now I'm going to think of this story every time I stub my toe, which is often. Thank you, Amber. And even if it's not true, it is an interesting story to tell at parties.
Definitely.
I will continue to believe it and tell it as an interesting tale of the history of Jack Daniels.
Regardless of whether or not him stubbing his toe was the cause of the infection and the blood infection, he did, there were people that did say, he forgot the safe combination, so him kicking the safe was probably a common, even that in and of itself is relatable, and
yes.
Yeah. I feel you, buddy.
Just forget it.
Fuck this thing.
Oh, man. That's a good one to end on, and I hope that's a true story. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of What the Fuck Wednesday. I don't know about you, but I will be going to sleep tonight dreaming about all of the crazy ways that I could possibly die and hoping that none of those things ever happen, knowing how shitty my luck is and how relevant a lot of these felt to my own personal life. So thank you, Amber, for that. Let us know if you feel like you relate to any of these stories, or maybe you know of a strange death that happened in your family or to a friend, or something that you just heard of over the years, and we can be sure to include it on the next edition of Strange Deaths.
Because there's a lot.
There are a lot. I'm sure it's a never-ending list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go real old school in like ancient times. There's some deaths. Dude died when a cow fell on him. Like, yeah, there's stuff like that.
Oh my God, let's get into that. You know, not that death should be entertaining, but I feel like talking about it in this way does make it a little more lighthearted and hopefully not as scary. I feel like talking about it and being death positive helps bring, you know, more of an understanding and like, I don't know, lightness about it that most people generally don't have.
No, I mean, and that's why I say, like, it's an inevitable part of life. Nobody makes it out of this life alive. Like, we all,
might as well talk about it.
It's going to happen one way or another. So
let's talk about all the more funny ways that could happen. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear any listener stories that they might have on this topic.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, be sure to go like, subscribe, all the things. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube if you want to see our faces for some reason. I don't know. That might be a thing you want to do. And, you know, we're around. So shout out, say hi. We love talking to you. And that's really all I can think of to say to you lovely people today. On one more note, I just want to thank our new Patreon members. I was so excited to see your names in my email inbox. So thank you to Therese and Nate for joining our Patreon and being supporters. Y'all have both been supporting us for quite some time now, and we really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And on that note, expect to see some messages from us asking for information so we can send you your goodies that you got for joining at the tier levels that you did. And now that we do want to include video content on YouTube for those that want to listen or watch true crime in video form, we will be mixing up the Patreon exclusives a little bit. But don't worry, there's still going to be a lot of content that you get as a patron that you will not get on YouTube or anywhere else. So if you're interested in that, be sure to go check out Patreon, and all of those links will be in the show notes. So thanks for our awesome listeners for all of your support.
But before we say goodbye, let's hear that riddle one more time. Some try to hide, some try to cheat, but time will show we always will meet. What am I? Did you figure it out? It's death.
That makes sense, and it's very fitting.
I figured it was an appropriate one for this topic of conversation.
Also, I did not know what it was, but I think I was too caught up in the fact that, like, the riddle itself just sounded really cool and ominous, and I was like, oh, it's like a fun poem. It's pretty. I like it. Oh, no, it's about death. Anyway. Okay, that's enough of our rambling at the end of this episode. So, until next time, stay safe.
And make good choices. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Arizona and Florida were up there. No.
Arr.
There she blows. All right. Fucking turned into a pirate all of a sudden.
Chief Deputy Buster Blackenston. I keep wanting to say Blackenstock. I read it over and over again. I was like, Blackenstock, that's not what it says. Also, the names in this story are great.
It's not time to stand watch. Don't tell me what to do.
Fuck you, watch.
This man managed to survive literally going over a... Why do I keep saying that? Over.
And someone in the wrong place at the wrong time. Pharmaceutical. I was like, I'm not gonna fucking say that word.
Pharmaceutical.
Pharmaceutical.
I don't know if you're being silly or if I should genuinely be worried about you right now.
Worried. Okay.
Okay. Got it.
The fuck? Oh, man.